Hello, tiny friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Pet Cemetery. Before I lay down any grass and trees, I should probably make a few of the pieces that need to make up the entrance because I won't know how far apart I need the trees to be because the sign is attached to the trees. And it's made up of several different salvaged parts, so I'm really not going to know how long it needs to be until I begin to build it. And there's also a wrought iron gate that I'll be making as well. I created these cutouts to help me keep everything in scale. I thought it would be very important to do so. And you can see my paper Era. She helped me create these two characters. I thought it would be a good idea to choose the tallest character of the story and then one of the kids. And I didn't want to go with the toddler, so I chose Ellie. She's in the cemetery searching for church, and old man Judd knows his way around. The old man is slouching right now, but if he stood straight up, he would be a lot taller than Era, and he stands about 6 inches high, and Ellie stands about 4 inches. With Ellie, I began with 3.5, and she just seemed a little too short. So I think 4 inches, 4 feet should do. You can see my paper Era. She's about 5.5 inches. So I really think that these sizes will work out for me. I wasn't really sure how paper Era would feel about being in the cemetery, but then I sent a picture to real life Era, and she told me that she actually loves cemeteries. So I think paper Era will be pretty comfortable here. And then later on, I'll probably put Old Man Judd and Ellie in the cemetery after it's all built. I think they'll look pretty cool in there. And maybe you'll see Paper Era roaming around the pet cemetery as well. Okay, so today I'm going to begin with the gate before I create the sign, which is made up of several pieces. I really didn't need to reference anything about the gate, and since I couldn't really make out the design, I chose an old Victorian wrought iron gate that I liked. So I kind of have a little bit of freedom to go with this, and I think any old Victorian wrought iron gate will do. So I sketched down the design, and I'm just kind of going to go off of what I sketched down as far as what it looks like. Now, I'm really bad at manipulating wire, so I chose the design that didn't have a lot of scrolly fancy pieces and something that would be a little bit easier for me to create. And I'm also going to create one of the posts that go with the gate as well. So I'm going to use this big spool of wire that I have laying around, and it's super easy to bend. I can bend it with my fingers, so it shouldn't be a problem to create the gate using this wire. So I'm just going to begin with cutting down all the parts and pieces that I need and kind of shaping it according to my sketch. I'm going to use my cutters, which I thought they were called Kleins, but I guess they're called Dykes. But they're super great to have and extra handy for me. Right now I'm just following along with my sketch, and I think I only had like 3 fancy pieces to try and manipulate, so it was pretty cool. But the wire is so easy to bend that it's not really straight, and these help flatten down my pieces so that they're nice and flat. But you can see this little piece right here, and then I just have like 2 S kind of scrolls to create, and everything else will be pretty straight. So I'm just going to lay down according to my sketch. I still have to make a latch, and I still have to make some hinges for this side, which I'm not going to attach to the post, but when I set it up, you'll be able to see that it was once attached to the post. Now, I set this next to the old man, and the original gate was super large, so I had to scale it down quite a bit. Even though I took the real dimensions from the gate and just converted it down to 1/12 using a 1/12 calculator, it was still kind of really large. So here you can see the difference between my sketch and the gate that I'm going to use. And it's quite a big difference. Originally, I wanted to solder this because I've never done that before. So with the help of one of our tiny friends, Lisa, Thank you so much for helping me. I watched her solder her Christmas tree together. I went and I purchased this flux. There were 3 different types. This one said it was lead free. It was the cheapest one. I wanted to go with the water soluble, but that was a little more pricey. So I picked this one. I was told by a few different people that it would work. And when I saw what Lisa was using to solder her tree with, I realized I had one of those tools, and silly me, I thought it was just a wood burning tool because that's what I purchased it for, and didn't realize it was a soldering tool as well. So I have my tool, I have my solder rosin, and I started reading the directions. Since I've never done anything like this before, I wanted to make sure I was doing it right. And then I began to clean off all my pieces because I read or learned that they needed to be cleaned off. Now, I'm just using an alcohol wipe because I don't know, right? But I did learn later on that I think you're supposed to sand the pieces if they are oxidized. And this wire is pretty dark. You can see the color of this wire because it is oxidized, and I didn't know that. So I'm just cleaning with alcohol wipes. So I don't think I properly cleaned them. And if you don't properly clean it, or it's not a clean wire, it's not going to work out. So I spent a lot of time trying to solder this together, and it just did not work out for me. I kind of had a feeling it wasn't going to, and it just didn't. And I realized I was spending way too much time on it and needed to move forward with a different solution. But the frustration started to get real, and I think that there was just several factors involved with this. I have not given up on solder altogether. I would still like to learn when I have more time to properly do so. So I'll come back to soldering another time. Instead, I resorted to good old-fashioned super glue and baking soda. Go with what you know, right? If one thing doesn't work, find another thing that will. And that's what I did. So I just began gluing these pieces together. And from that point, the whole process moved a lot quicker. I'm going to skip through this process pretty much. You just put down your glue, piece them together, and then sprinkle some baking soda on top to help secure the bond a little quicker. So moving forward, I'm just laying my pieces down and applying my glue. And I was much happier doing this, and I could have did this from the beginning, and I knew that, but I really wanted to try to solder. So this is what I've gotten so far, and now I just need to lay down my post. I did create the top ornament, and now I'm going to add the top pieces to my individual post using bead spacers and beads. And this is what it looks like. And I just need to straighten this wire out. I need to straighten a lot of the pieces out as I'm going along before I glue them to the gate. So this is where I'm at. I've added my hinges, and I put 3 on the one side, and then I added my latch, and I used a copper wire that was super simple to bend. It was easier than the wire that I'm using for the gate. I didn't need to glue them down. I just needed them to be attached. So I just wrapped them around the pieces, and that'll be just fine. Okay, so moving on to the post, I did try to use this wire as well to create that. I really wanted to, but I just could not make my idea work with that wire. So again, I'm going to go with what I know, and I'm going to use wood. And I have these square wooden dowels that I've cut into 4 pieces, and I'm just going to use those and tacky glue. So I've laid them down on my mat. I'm going to use my mat grid to kind of keep them spaced out. And I'm trying to go for a 1/2 inch per side. So I decided to tape them down to try to keep them as even as possible. I don't think that worked out in the end, but I really tried hard. So this was my method that I came up with. I was just thinking that the tape would help them from shifting around on me. And then I'm going to take these little matchsticks and just lay 3 across each side. So here you can see that I was trying really hard because as I flipped over each side, I was taping them down and gluing my pieces into place. And it was working out pretty good for the most part. But after this whole thing was finished and I was looking at it, I wasn't happy with the thickness of the rods that went around each side, which were the matchsticks. So, you know, when you're not happy with something, you just got to rework it until you're happy with it, right? So what I did was I took it all apart and I cut the matchsticks in half. And here you can see the difference. One end is not cut, and maybe it's this one. Yeah. This end you can see is a lot wider than the end I'm holding. So that's uncut, and I cut them down to half the size. They were super thin and they looked a lot more natural, but some of them were so thin that when I went to press down to attach the glue, the one popped and kind of buckled in on me. Now it didn't break completely, but I loved the way that it looked, so I left it like that. And then that gave me an idea to skip a rod altogether and then put one as if it was detached or falling down. So I'm happy with it now. And I'm going to go ahead and create the top part. Okay, so for the top, it's kind of like this arched cap with these open archways. So I'm going to use cardstock for this. And I didn't know this at the time, but later on when I went back through the photos, I realized that the post that is there does actually have an arched top. So it kind of worked out. This was just the one that I picked. I began with 4 square pieces and then I cut the little arch to the opening. I'm going to do the 2 sides that arch first, and I've just glued them to the post for now. I need them to dry completely before I can connect them. So I'm going to go ahead and create the decorative part that will sit on top of the post. I'm using bead spacers and beads again. I'm also using super glue and a bead pin to keep it more stabilized throughout time since it's just going to be sitting on top of the arch. It doesn't really match the top of the gate, but it still gives off the same idea. And this is what it's going to look like. I'll be painting this with different layers of paint so they won't all look like individual pieces. And they'll just look like one whole cohesive piece. Okay, so to attach the 2 arch pieces together, I'm going to use a skinny strip of printing paper and tacky glue. So I'm just going to lay the strip onto one of the arches on the inside. And once I get that attached nicely, I'm just going to connect the other side right onto that strip of paper. So it'll kind of act like a bandage and keep them together permanently, and you won't even see it because it'll be on the inside. So once I get it attached, I'm just going to tip it over. I'm just going to use my tweezers to just flatten that down a little more tightly. And now I'll go on to create the other 2 sides. Since they don't have to be arched, I'm just laying it down on the square card and tracing it out and cutting out the arched opening. Okay, this is what it looks like. I've got all 4 of my sides on, and now it's time to add some more detail to this piece. So I'm going to continue using the card with my tacky glue for this whole process. And right now I've cut a very thin strip and I'm just going to attach it to the corner pieces for kind of like a trimming. Now this will be the first layer. I'm going to go in right after I get this layer on and continue with a second layer using a smaller strip. So it'll be a double layer of trimming going around this post. Well, going around the cap of the post. So I'm just adding this strip to the bottom part of the first one that I added. This will give it a little more dimension and detail. And now I'm going to move on to the hoods of the archway. And again, I used a very small skinny strip and tacky glue. I'm making a little fold in the middle of the strip to kind of match the pointy top to the archway. And I just ran the tacky glue right along the edge of the opening and then just stuck the strip in and made some adjustments. I also used a toothpick to help push that piece right into place and so that it was nicely attached to the side. And then I just made some adjustments and trimmed off the excess that I didn't need. Next, for the last detail, I'm going to add some edges that go right around the corner pieces. They'll be mitered together to attach each other. So skipping through all that part, this is where I'm at. This is what the gate looks like. And I'll give you a nice look at the post and the edges that I put on there. And I also attached the ornament top. I just poked a hole through the top with my little hand drill and glued that piece right into place. So now I have the two pieces that are ready to be painted. So for my first layer, I'm going to begin with a base layer of black, and I'm going to use my chalk paint. This is called Ink by Waverly. One, because it's the only black I have right now, and two, it will stick very well to the metal and also dry with a matte finish. So it'll kind of look dull and flat. I always like to begin my aging with a base layer of black for most of my aging. Sometimes I do a base layer of gray. Sometimes I do a base layer of brown. It just depends on what I'm creating. I think that it just pulls out a lot of the detail and saves you some time from having to go back in later on and shadow some of those areas. And now I'm going to go in with a white brush. So just a dry brush of white. Some areas will be heavier, some areas will be lighter, and the lighter areas will actually look more like a gray. And you can see that the black is just left behind for added detail. This technique just also makes it look like the paint has worn down over the years, down to the black wrought iron metal. So, did I say that right? Down to the black wrought iron. Yeah, okay, so moving forward, you can see what it looks like. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the gate. I'm just getting a visual with Old Man Judd here. So moving on to the gate, I'm just going to do the same thing. And I'm going to be skipping some of these parts on the gate as well. So I'm kind of just sporadically putting it on there. Okay, so here are my two pieces so far, and that is 2 layers of paint right now. But I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to add some rust. So to create the rust, I'm going to use orange and blue acrylic paint, some Mod Podge, and some baking soda. And I'm just making a mixture all together. The baking soda will leave behind kind of like a texture. And the blue and orange make a really good rust color. Right now, it's a lot brighter on camera than in person, but I'm just going to go ahead and dab this around. I do love the way they look as is, But since they've been out in the weather for years and years and they're supposed to be metal, I thought I needed to add some rust. I did get a little carried away with it, and in the end, I had to tone it down a little more. But after moving on to the gate, I actually decided it needed something else beside the rust. So I needed to add maybe some mold or something. This is just what I was thinking. So I got out my two greens. I have a lime green and a bright green, and I'm just going to mix these two together and water them down. So I'm adding a little bit of water to them as well. And then I'm going to begin to apply this. And this is when I realized I didn't like the paint, and I knew better than to use the paint, but I did anyways. Instead, I should have used my lime green chalk pastels to shade it in because it was just so bright and just too dominating. It was just too vivid. So after I realized that, I let it dry overnight and then I went back in and just toned it down some. But again, it is a lot brighter on camera than in real life. Lesson learned. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I chose paint. I normally don't do that. I think on the metal, it's okay because it's metal. But for the wood, you definitely want to go a lot lighter on this type of detail. Okay, so at this point, they're going to be a little bright, but in the end, I think you'll see a difference. I'm going to do a technique that I saw from my good tiny friend Shira at Queen City Minis. She used a used fabric sheet to create some webbing. And I thought it was a really neat technique, so I wanted to try it for the post and the gate. So you just take a little tiny piece and you just pull it apart lightly until you're happy with what it looks like. Took a little bit of time. And this isn't my normal fabric sheet that I would normally use. So it has a little bit of a different texture. It's a different fabric altogether. You just want to pull lightly. You don't want to pull too hard, but I got down to a piece that I liked. And I'm just going to put this right on the inside somewhere. I'm just going to play around until I figure out where I want to put this. I know I kind of want to put it inside towards the top. Maybe, the spiders have nested in the top and just came down and took over. So I'm going to place this piece somewhere in here, and then I'll place a second piece towards the bottom. And I began using fabric tack for this, but I switched over to tacky glue because the fabric tack was too thick and the fabric sheet was sticking to my tweezers and not to the piece. So I just moved over to tacky glue for this. And I'm just using a toothpick to put it into place. And I'm just laughing because right now it looks like paint just threw up all over my piece. But this is what the webbing looks like. And I'm going to move on to a piece for the bottom, and I'm going to add just a little piece to the top of the gate. So I'm just going to skip ahead to show you what those look like. Okay, I'm going to use a black piece of felt so that you can see it a little better, and I'm trying to get up pretty close, but I really like the way this looks. This is a really great technique, and I love how the webbing looks inside of this post. So that's what the bottom looks like. It just looks super cool. I'll show you the gate. For the gate, I just put a tiny little piece on the top. I didn't want to overdo it. But I'm definitely going to be adding more webbing around some of the other pieces as I go along. So that is it for today's video, tiny friends. And now I have my first piece to the entrance, the wrought iron gate and the post. Let's go into the cemetery to get a better visual. Okay, so I've got these two big branches and I was thinking about putting these two pieces together like so. I really love the big knot in the front, and the smaller piece would be the piece that the sign is attached to, like right around here. So I think I'm going to go with that for the tree, and then you can see a little closer. It's not going to be set up this way, but I'm just getting a visual. I'm just getting super excited. I'm so obsessed with this project right now, tiny friends, because I have so many ideas and so many pieces that I get to create. So, my next episode, I will begin to create the Pet Cemetery sign and all the different individual pieces that is made up of. And then from there, I can go ahead and install these trees, lay down the grass. I hope you all have enjoyed this video today. I have some fun ideas to add to the front as well. Just a few more details that I thought would be great as a reference to some of the other Pet Sematary movies and Stephen King's other novels. So you'll have to tune in to see what happens there and what I come up with. If you've enjoyed this video today, please don't forget to click that like button and give it a thumbs up and let me know what you thought in the comments below of the gate. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you all for subscribing and all your support. Welcome to my new subscribers and to my returning subscribers and to those of you that have been with me from day one. Thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed yet and would like to see more of my miniature projects or follow along with me on my miniature journey, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that top bell notification button so that you don't miss any new projects and episodes coming up. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, tiny friends, you all have a lovely day, and remember,
Well, sometimes that is better.